Hello there everyone, Mediocre Otaku here, and today let's talk about Dragon Ball GT. Now this is a show that it's the only Dragon Ball show until Super that I watched in the original Japanese before I ever saw it on TV. I was super into Dragon Ball Z, I still am, and I had heard about Dragon Ball GT, so my dad actually found all the episodes, downloaded all of them, and then every night before I went to bed we would watch two, maybe three episodes. Um, so that was my first exposure to GT. And then when they brought it over here, they did some questionable changes, in my opinion, which they also did to Z, but I was unaware of because I hadn't seen the Japanese version of Z. But that's neither here nor there. Uh, so basically, I feel that amongst the Dragon Ball community, GT's reputation has improved over the years. I know when it first came out, a lot of people ragged on it. It's too Goku centric, which it is. Um, there's so many plot holes, which I never really thought there were. Z has a lot of plot holes, and there's some stuff in Super that I find highly questionable. I'm not sure if I would consider them plot holes necessarily, but they make me wonder what the fuck is going on. It's probably just Akira Toriyama forgetting something. Um, but yeah, GT, in my opinion, has the best music out of all three shows. Um, Akito Tokunaga, I believe, is the composer for GT. Shinsuke Kikuchi did Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. Not sure why they switched to this new guy, but I think it was a change for the better. Other people might disagree. I prefer the music in GT, both in the TV show and the opening and ending songs. Um, it has the best animation out of all three. It seemed like towards the end, their budget was sort of running low because the worst lead animator or the animation supervisor started doing a lot more stuff towards the end of the show. I believe his name is Masayuki Uchiyama. Um, and if you've seen Dragon Ball Z, you'll know there's a lot of episodes that don't look great. But even he, I feel, stepped his game up in GT. His animation looked more on model and more fluid than it did in the prior two series. Um, so there's two positives so far, animation and music. The next positive, I would say, is the concept behind pretty much every story arc. I know people don't like Goku being turned back into a kid. I personally don't mind it too much because Goku, even as an adult, was very childlike. So I don't see the big deal behind that necessarily. I think the Black Star Dragon Balls is a very interesting concept and something that I can picture being within the Dragon Ball universe. I thought bringing the Tuffles, or Sufrujin, as some people might prefer, into the story with Baby was very interesting. Implementation of Baby, not so great. I think they could have made him a more sympathetic character instead of just being some insane guy, which is basically all of the villains in GT, which is kind of unfortunate. The Super 17 stuff was interesting. The idea of all these people coming back from hell to fight all of the Z warriors is cool, but it's kind of weird how they went about doing that by making a second Android 17 to somehow make a rift between hell and the real world and then fusing them. It's weird. And then also at some point in that story arc, Goku attempts to blow himself up along with Android 17, but Android 17 puts up a barrier, which I would assume would have held the explosion inside of it, really killing both of them. It actually saved both of their lives. I don't know. And then we have the final story arc with the evil dragons and the cracked Dragon Balls, which I honestly think is the most perfect concept for ending this story, right? Because you have these Dragon Balls that clearly everyone has been abusing throughout the whole story. And finally, at the very end of this story, they get punished for their overuse of them. Again, implementation maybe not the best, but I still thought it was a really cool story arc. I liked seeing all the different designs for the Shadow Dragons, and I thought the fights were, at the very least, all interesting. Um, so yeah, there's that. There's three big positives, and I think those are things that pretty much anyone can agree with. I'm sure there are people who disagree, um, but three positives right there. Now, the negatives of this show. Uh, it's very Goku centric, as I stated earlier. He is the only character who is powerful enough to do anything of note in this story. You have Pan kill one of the robots on planet M2, and you have Trunks defeat the Cardinal of Lord Lude. I think his name was what? I think his name was Muchi Muchi or Muchi Machi or something like that. Then he has a second transformation, which I believe Goku has to defeat. Um, Goku basically kills everything in this series, which he did a lot of the fighting and he won a lot of the fights in the other two shows, but at least it seemed like the other characters could potentially have put up a good fight as well. And sometimes they were actually the ones who defeated these enemies. Um, you got the sense that Vegeta and Trunks could fight fairly evenly with Perfect Cell. And Goku was also able to fight evenly for the most part, even though he knew that he would lose, and so he sent Gohan in. You had Gotenks and Ultimate Gohan and Vegito against Majin Buu. You had Piccolo and Vegeta against Frieza, which they were only really viable for Frieza's second, third, and first forms. After he got to Form 4, it was like Goku had to go Super Saiyan. But that's fine. And then even in the Saiyan arc, you have Yajirobe and Krillin and Chaozu and Tien, not so much Yamcha, of course, doing their part in inflicting at least a bit of damage to Nappa and Vegeta. So the lack of interaction with these other characters in GT really sort of brings the story down a bit, because you've been watching these characters for years now, and all of a sudden, even characters like Vegeta and Krillin aren't really even in this story anymore, until the final story arc, where Vegeta turns Super Saiyan 4 and he kind of helps out Goku. So I don't know why they went about doing it like that, but they did. One of the other negatives is that the ending is a little ambiguous, and I wish that they would have explained it a little bit better. And I am completely aware that their intent was for it to be ambiguous, and to give you this sense that Goku will always be watching over the Earth. But I wish they would have just said what happened to him when he rode off with Shenron. Because clearly, when he goes to visit Master Roshi and Piccolo, they know something is up with him, but you never hear them say what's up with him. And it's just a little bit annoying. However, I will say that I would prefer GT's ending over Dragon Ball Z's ending. And I'm probably going to prefer the final story arc of GT to the final story arc of Super. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm predicting that Goku will fight Beerus one last time, Goku will win, and then Beerus will offer him the position of God of Destruction, and Goku will turn it down, much like he did with Kami. That is my prediction. I could be completely wrong, but I would be shocked, at the very least, if Goku does not have a second fight with Beerus. because they've sort of been hinting at it throughout the whole series. Um, but other than those things, I don't really see any negatives with the show. Um, any plot holes that might be in there were not as bad, in my opinion, as, Cell saying that he has this like nucleus thing in his head, and as long as his head is intact, he can keep on regenerating. But only a few episodes before, Goku blasted off Cell's head with a Kamehameha, and Cell was able to regenerate. That one really bothers me. Um, and GT doesn't have any super complex or convoluted storylines, which I think is fine. I do like the Goku Black arc, but that shit was way more complicated than it needed to be. I don't know why they felt the need to basically have 3 Zamasus in there. There was present Zamasu, future Zamasu, and then other future Zamasu. Or maybe it was farther back past Zamasu. I don't even know, because it's so complicated. And then whenever time travel gets involved with the Dragon Ball series so far, it gets really complicated. But yes, I like GT. I feel like a lot of people in the Dragon Ball community have come to appreciate GT a bit more over the years and realize it's really not that bad of a show. Is it as good as Dragon Ball or Dragon Ball Z? I don't think so. Is it as good as Super? Maybe, honestly. Super includes a lot more characters, but like I said, there's a lot more stuff in Super that really has me scratching my head so far. But I mean, I would have to give GT like a 6.5 or a 7, which is a pretty respectable score. But that is really all I have to say about GT. Fuck Heroes Legacy. That TV special is trash. It does not add anything to any of the Dragon Ball lore at all. But the TV show is actually pretty decent. If you have watched through it and you didn't like it, I would recommend maybe giving it a second chance, honestly. The animation is way better than Super's, at the very least. And the music, too, in my opinion. I don't like Norihito Sumimoto's score. I mean, there's some stuff that's good, but others that I really don't want to hear. But that is it for this video, guys. Thank you for watching, and I will see you all next time.